We were discussing, I think, the finite sample properties of the least squares. We will start with finite sample properties of least squares. Then we will go to large scale properties, large sample properties, which is otherwise called asymptotic properties. That's how we intend doing. And after that, the idea is hypothesis testing. And after that, we'll take some examples, and probably I intend sending some examples to you, mailing some examples to you, so that it'll be easier for us to discuss. As part of the explanation, we'll also be discussing examples here by showing the slides, especially when we discuss what we call a delta method. Okay, finite sample properties of least squares. Why do we need that? In econometrics, what is the idea of finite sample properties? So the basic economic conceptual idea is we repeatedly sample from the population and characterize the behavior of the sample of samples. Remember, you have whoever does any applied work has one sample to work with. So he does whatever estimation, whatever method. So he gets a set of parameters and straight away goes to inference, assuming that errors are following normal distribution, for example. And he also assume, so that gives him the way to assume that the coefficients also follow some distribution. That's how it goes. That's how this is applied econometrics. Nobody, I mean, including me, who does applied econometrics, he has a sample, he runs and saves it, and he goes for repeated sampling, okay, and then takes an average or expectation value sample and report that. That doesn't happen. He or she hopes that his assumption is correct, and he or she hopes that as I do repeated sampling, or as the sample size goes to infinity, this will be the case. It will go to whatever distribution I have assumed. So this is exactly this is the reality. This is how it goes. But in what is the conceptual experiment behind that? Conceptual idea. This is the conceptual idea. We are supposed to have repeatedly sampled from the population and then arrive at the statistical behavior. This leads to what is called an unbiased estimation. This is what we saw the other day. The second bullet point, don't forget, this is called the deviations form. So taking expectations, we iterate over x. This OLS 29 is for particular x. Using LAE, you can say for any x, so that the conditional expectation also is the unconditional expectation OLS 30. So this will be true whatever may be x. So as independent of x, that's one. Unconditional on x, not independent, unconditional of x. That's OLS 30. So the interpretation of this result is that for any particular set of observations x, the viscous estimate is expectation b, no matter what that set is. So the conditionality is removed. When we average over all possible values of x, we find the unconditional mean is beta as well. So essentially, the statement of that conditional mean of beta equal to conditional mean of b equal to beta means for the data we have observed, we can expect certain behavior of the statistic that we compute, such as slope vector b. What we have on hand when we do applied work is that this one expected conditional mean. We hope that the same thing will be proved for any b, any x, so that we can claim that expected value of b is equal to beta, the population parameter. So by considering such statistics, we consider whether what we learn from a particular sample can be reasonably extended to the other samples if they were drawn under similar circumstances. We all hope and we expect these to come true. So this is how it proceeds. Okay, now what is this now? When we talk of unbiasedness and all those stuff, when will bias come? We saw that bias can come due to omission of relevant variables. And there are two things here: omission of relevant variables and inclusion of irrelevant variables. Inclusion of irrelevant variables should not pose any problem. I mean, it does not mean that you keep on adding variables. Remember, there are other problems, but it won't cause any bias. But if you omit any important variables, it does cause bias. What is the direction of the bias? and whether it be upward or downward bias depends on the correlation. That's what we are going to see next. We make numerous specification errors while constructing a regression model. One of them is omission of relevant variables and inclusion of irrelevant variables. This also is a specification problem. Though inclusion of irrelevant variables does not cause bias, but it's also a mistake. Okay, we'll call this omission of relevant variables, which is a more serious problem. Showing explicitly the bias caused by omitting important explanatory variables, and also show the direction, the size of this bias. So deriving this bias caused by omitting important explanatory variables is an example of misspecification analysis. Remember, again, this is another sad fact of applied economics. No one does this kind of misspecification analysis. There are books, articles written why you should do misspecification analysis after you have estimated any model. For a simple fact, even OLS model. Misspecification could be this, misspecification due to errors, assumption of errors, misspecification due to functional form, misspecification due to inclusion of irrelevant variables, and so many other ways you can cause misspecification in your model. But who does that? Hardly any. Okay, this is my important variable of explanatory variables is an example of misspecification analysis. Okay, look at that. The correctly specified regression model is there's two independent variable. That's OLS 31. Suppose by some mistake or something oversight, you have dropped x2 while estimating, and estimate only with x1. This will be the variable OLS 32 x1 transpose x1 x1 transpose y, which can be written in this form. This is again the deviations form, remember, OLS 32. What does this say? The bias will vanish under only one condition. X1 transpose x2 is equal to 0. What does that mean? Or beta is equal to 0. What is x1 transpose x2 mean?
There is no correlation between x1 and x2.
Can you say orthogonal?
Sorry, sir?
X1 and
Orthogonal?
X2 orthogonal, yes.
Orthogonal?
Yeah.
Okay, so orthogonal regression. Remember, this is always cited as a cure for perfect multicollinearity. Run orthogonal regression. Okay, now this orthogonal or beta 2 is 0. Otherwise, unless these two conditions are satisfied, B1 is biased. And this leads to the famous omitted variables formula. What is omitted variable bias formula actually? So EB1x equal to B1 plus beta 1 2 P1 2 beta 2, where P1 2 is that comes from OLS 32.
Sir, I have a question, sir. We
Yeah.
can have a bias even when X1 and E are correlated, like
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely. It is because of that only. Remember, I always said x1, x2, 0 correlation is difficult to expect even in cross-section data, but it is quite likely in cross-section data, but very much likely in time series data.
But sir, we have assumed that x1 prime E is 0, right?
Yeah, that's. Somebody asked me this question, is in practice this is it correct? But remember, Adrishan, our assumption was in something in relation to your question, it is a full rank matrix, correct?
Yes.
So that explicitly excludes that. But having said that, rank condition is violated only if there is perfect multicollinearity. Do you accept that?
Sir, can you repeat that once?
Rank condition is violated only if there is perfect multicollinearity.
Yes.
Okay. So some sort of correlation is unavoidable, but you don't worry about it. So, but this is the omitted variables formula. This will completely vanish. Only the third bullet point is true. This are perfectly orthogonal, and beta 2 equal to 0. Unless this is satisfied, B1 is biased. Okay, so there is always a possibility of bias in your regression when you omit variables, omit important variables. Okay, now we shall explain the omitted variables issue in a simple case. Okay, this was in a very general case. Now let me say we'll take only two scalar variables, beta 1, beta 2, x1, x2 are two variables, two independent variables. We assume that this model satisfies the assumptions A1 through A4. That's all the stuff. Okay. Suppose that the primary interest is in B1, the partial effect of x1 on y. For example, y is hourly wage, or better still, log of hourly wage. X1 is education. X2 is a measure of ability or innate ability, whichever way you measure it. To get an unbiased estimate of B1, beta 1, we should run a regression of y on x1 and x2, which gives unbiased estimators of beta 0, beta 1, and beta 2. However, due to our ignorance of data unavailability, we estimate the model excluding x2. That is, we perform a simple regression of y tilde, y on x1 only, where I have used a tilde to emphasize the coefficients come from an underspecified model. So this is correctly specified model. So I have inadvertently used this word underspecified model. So is there something called overspecified model? That's what people say when you include irrelevant variables. All sorts of things are being bandied about. Okay, underspecified model. You have excluded very relevant variable. So we can use this word underspecified model. Okay, what happens now? What should be the bias? To understand the impact of omitted random variable, we have to recall two cases when a simple regression of look at this. I'm going to ask you questions now. When a simple regression of y on x1 will produce the same wireless estimate on x1 as the regression of y on x1 and x2. What am I saying? We have to recall two cases when a simple regression of y on x1 will produce the same wireless estimate on x1 as the regression of y on x1 and x2. That is, y hat equal to beta 0 plus b1 x1 beta b2 x2. There are two cases when a simple regression of y on x1 will produce the same wireless estimate on x1. We have actually said these two cases. Okay, how do you analyze that? It turns out, meaning there is a proof available which I did not type. Okay, it turns out that there is a simple relationship between b1 tilde and b1, which allows for interesting comparisons between simple and multiple regression. This bullet point comes from above thing. This turns out stuff, if you are interested, I can type and send you the relation. Okay, where beta 1 has a slope coefficient from the sample regression of xi2 on xi1, I equal to 1 to n. Go through this. It shows how b1 tilde differs from the partial effect of x1 on y hat. So what does it tell you? When will the bias vanish?
Either when B2 is equal to 0 or when B1 hat is 0.
0. Okay. The only term that contributes to the bias is the partial effect of x2 on y hat times the slope in the regression of x2 on x1. Read the last bullet point. What is the slope in the same regression of x2 and x1?
B1 hat. B1 hat.
B1 hat. Okay, so the only term that contributes to the bias is the partial effect of x2 on y hat. That's the first one, and times the slope in the same regression of x1 on x hat. Okay, the relationship between B1 tilde and B1 also shows there are two distinct cases where they'll be equal. The partial effect of x2 on y hat is 0 in the sample, that is B2 is 0, or x1 and x2 are uncorrelated in the sample, that is B1 hat is 0. That's what somebody said just now. So these are the two cases when the bias will vanish. Okay, now, so this gives us an idea of measuring the bias, whether there'll be upward bias or downward bias, depending on the strength of the correlation. Okay, even though the simple and multiple regression formulas are almost never identical, we can use a formula in OLS35 to characterize why they might be quite similar or very different. For example, if B2 is small, we might expect the multiple and simple regression estimates of B1 to be quite similar. That means the omission is very insignificant. It is quite insignificant. Since B1 hat from OLS35 depends only on the independent variables in the sample, we treat it as fixed. Because remember, B1 hat is nothing but x1 and x2. According to our assumption A1 through A4, they are fixed. So depends only on the independent variables in the sample. So we treat it as fixed, non-random when computing expected value of B1 tilde. Since the model in OLS34 satisfy all the assumptions A1 through A4, we know that B1 and B2 will be unbiased for beta1 and beta2 respectively. Okay, so this OLS34 is the original model. So E B1 tilde equal to E B1 B2 B1 hat, which we can separate it out to the linear operation. Okay, B1 plus beta2 B1 hat. Remember the B1 hat, the expectation, I've just taken it as B1 hat only because it is fixed, which implies that the bias in B1 tilde is, this is the famous statement. Bias in B1 tilde is bias B1 tilde that's equal to expected value of B1 tilde minus beta1 equal to beta2 B1 hat. This is the famous omitted variable. This is the one that captures the omitted variables bias. OLS36. Okay. Since the bias arises from omitting the explanatory variable x2, the term on the right hand side is often called the omitted variable bias. We have already seen two important cases when B1 tilde is unbiased. So what will be when will the bias occur? The bias, one reason when bias occurs is when x2 and x2 are correlated. The bias can be summarized in a table form as shown below. Go through this. Summary of bias in B1 tilde when x2 is omitted in estimating equation OLS34. Go through this. This is only for the two variable case. Extending to the multivariate more than 2 is a bit extremely messy. So this is, for example, according to this table, the bias in B1 tilde is positive if beta2 is greater than 0. That is, x2 has a positive effect on y, and x1, x2 are positively correlated. But beta2 is an unknown population parameter, and hence we cannot be certain about this. Well, how do we solve? Then how do we decide there is bias? Usually we have a fairly good idea about the direction of the partial effect of x2 and y, and one can make an educated guess about the direction of correlation. This is the famous statement from any applied econometrician. What is an educated guess? You rely on literature and come to the conclusion, oh, I might have missed a relevant variable. And this is how the referees always say, oh, this is an omitted variable problem. The literature says this, literature says that. But a rigorous applied econometrician will not rely on all this stuff. There are tests for misspecification problem, which includes tests for omission bias also. Okay, so if you're interested in this and interested in doing a rigorous analysis econometrics, do go and read misspecification testing. There are books written on that misspecification testing, and an advanced econometrics book also. They may have tests on how to test for omitted variable bias. Okay. Inclusion of irrelevant variables. I'm not going to spend more time on this because inclusion of irrelevant variables can be dispensed with fairly quickly. Is that inclusion of an irrelevant variable is misspecifying the model in regression. Wait a minute. There must be about something about restriction, no? I have not included that. I don't know where it went. Inclusion of irrelevant variables. So inclusion of irrelevant variables will not cause you that much of a headache as the exclusion of relevant variables. So we can say quickly that inclusion of irrelevant, you can dispense away with this discussion fairly quickly. Inclusion of an irrelevant variable or over-specifying. This is another idea, over-specifying. When is the model over-specified? The model, I have just written it because in many statistics books and econometrics textbooks, this kind of statements are used. In statistics books, you won't see such terms. Over-specifying the model in multiple regression analysis. Okay, if the regression is correctly given by this and is the correct model, that is, we have included some extra variables. We estimate OLS 31. What is OLS 31? What is OLS 31? This is OLS 31. This is so X1, B1 only, but we estimate OLS 31, which has the extra variable, extra set of variables X2. Okay, so this is what it is. That's the correct model. So we have included some extra variables. Just as omission of irrelevant variables is equivalent to estimating a regression model by imposing incorrect restriction, which produces a bias in estimators, inclusion of irrelevant variables X2 in the regression is equivalent to failing to impose a restriction beta to equal to 0 while estimating the model. However, in this case, estimating OLS 31 is not incorrect. So we do not have to prove that the least squares estimator will still be unbiased, because according to our earlier results, we can write this because it's not expectation beta 2 is not supposed to be is supposed to vanish. Okay, so this is exactly what. So where exactly does the problem lie? The result seems to suggest that we can, as a general practice, overfit the model. This is a big mistake. From a theoretical point of view, such overfitted models will result in a reduction of the precision of estimates. So this exercise I have seen in many people. They put everything that they suspect in the multiple regression thing, and then estimate the model and come running to me, sir, I have included everything, and 8 out of 10 variables are turning to be insignificant. There are other problems and all those stuff. You start asking them, why did we include this particular variable? They have no clue, because they thought that is important. Please do not do any such regression experiment that way. Before doing any such regression, applied econometrics, sit with the literature, sit with theory, what has been done before, see what past results tell you, and then form your model accordingly. So do not, so regression should not be a catch-all model. Okay.
Sir.
Yep.
Sir, in case of over-specification, shouldn't the adjusted R-square give us
Correct. Yes, that will also tell you. Exactly. Adjusted R-square also will tell you. But remember, I think that occasion we said that I think I did tell you about something. If I remember right, something is greater than unity or something like that, to check whether a particular variable is contributing to the overall fit or not. Do you remember that? In case of t-test and f-test, remember that?
Mod t is greater than 1.
Greater than 1, or f-test is greater than 1, or something like that I said. That is definitely a good idea. But if you are interested, I can tell you places where this has been done rigorously, and but that is beyond the scope of this particular introductory econometrics course. They teach you all this stuff. In an advanced econometrics course, I will not hold any punch. Okay, but here for I have to tell you only tell you, or rather suggest, that after doing any regression, go for a misspecification testing. Okay, there are other reset tests, ROM set tests, linear model, non-linear model, this kind of omission variable bias, and all those stuff. You have to read a lot. Okay. What is this? Where am I? Okay, earlier research we can write this. So where exactly is the problem? Like overall fit from a theoretical point of view, such overfitted models will result in a reduction of precision of estimates. We will show later that the covariance matrix of estimate in the regression 37 is never larger than the covariance matrix estimated in the regression OLS 31. What is OLS 37? The one with excluded inclusion of irrelevant variables. Of course, there is no loss if x1 transpose x2 equal to 0. To illustrate the problem, forget it. Forget it. Now comes to the important thing. Unbiasedness is done about. Unbiasedness is all about the mean of the estimator B. Okay, so EB should be equal to beta, which is the unknown population parameter vector. The next thing, variance of the least squares estimator. If the regressors are non-stochastic, then the sampling variance of the least squares estimator can be derived, or either by treating X as either a matrix of constants or by allowing X to be stochastic, but do the analysis conditionally on the observed X and then average over X, as we did while obtaining OLS 30 from OLS 29. We have shown before this. This is nothing but the deviation form of the OLS estimator. By assumption A4, you should remember all this assumption. Var Ex is equal to sigma square I. Thus, conditional covariance matrix of least square slope estimator is as following. Derivation. With this, we are going to discuss an important theorem called the Gauss-Markov theorem. The question is always asked, why least squares? I told you n number of times, in spite of a lot of, what should I say, advancement in estimation econometrics, in case of other estimation procedures like ML, GMM, and all those stuff. The very same professors who suggest MLE and GMM, they never fail to say provide a least squares estimator also for any problem that they suggest. Least squares, we are going to show that if you are willing to confine yourself to the linear class of estimators, least squares is the best. Okay, what is best? That is what we are going to define through this Gauss-Markov theorem. Okay, so that is why most of the cases, or many of the cases, you can say that this is also a limitation. Why should you confine yourself only to linear models? The real world actually non-linear. Real world is actually non-linear, but any non-linear thing, invariably there's some sort of linear approximation involved via the Taylor's theorem. Okay, so many authors have shown that in spite of non-linearity, how you can reduce the bias or the reduce the variance by using again linear least squares method only. Okay, so this explains why least squares, in spite of some of the limitations, still is very important and is favored by many, not because it is simple. Remember, there is also a nonlinear least squares also, where you may need to do Gauss-Newton and other things. Okay, because of some very attractive properties, and the second, because of the simplicity. Okay, why is this least squares preferred? If you're ready to confine yourself on the linear unbiased estimators. Okay, now this leads to Gauss-Markov theorem. Gauss-Markov theorem. We shall obtain a general result for the class of linear unbiased estimators of beta. In the linear regression with the regressor matrix X, the least squares estimator B is generally called the minimum variance linear unbiased estimator of beta, or BLEU, which many of you must have heard of. Okay, the word best is to be explained. The minimum variance linear unbiased estimator. What is best in this situation? Whenever you say best in econometrics, you have to explain. Whenever you say least in econometrics, you have to show, you have to explain. Linear here means an estimator of BI of beta I is linear if and only if it can be expressed as a linear function of the data on the dependent variable. Okay, so Wij can be a function of the sample value. This is nothing but our estimator that you have seen so far. Okay, now this is essentially the ith row in OLS estimator defined in OLS 17. From a different point of view, why I have used W, it can be called as a weight. So it can be said as a weight also. It can give the interpretation W as weight. I don't go too much into that. This is essentially the ith row in the OLS estimate defined in OLS 17. X transpose X inverse, X transpose Y. What is best here? Best here means having the smallest variance among all other linear unbiased estimators. So what Gauss-Markov theorem proves is why least squares estimators are the best. So we have to show that our estimator B in this case has the smallest variance among any other unbiased estimator, say B bar. But there is a problem here. Our estimator is a vector. What do you mean by smallest variance when you are considering a vector of coefficients? We are going to see that shortly. Note also that the assumption of normality is not necessary. We don't need that. Only assumption A1 through A4 are necessary. Recall that we already showed that least squares estimators are unbiased. But there could be many other unbiased estimators. You can, from my experience, I can tell you, you can write any estimator and show that they are unbiased. Okay, many estimators are unbiased in that case. Okay, so later on we are going to say, because of this, econometricians insist. Okay, your estimator, if you are suggesting an estimator, it should be at least consistent. We are going to see what the definition of consistency later on when we go from unbiased small sample to large sample. So Granger, the late Granger, the Nobel laureate, he has openly said that if you are suggesting an estimator, if you can't prove that it is at least consistent, you have no role to play here. Please go out, leave econometrics profession. Okay, so this unbiasedness is a small sample property. Consistency is a large sample property. Okay, so there could be many unbiased estimators. That's why the unbiasedness, you can prove unbiasedness of many estimators which need not be consistent. There could be many other unbiased estimators satisfying assumption A1 through A4. The question is, could there be any other unbiased? Yeah.
Why unbiasedness is a small sample property? Because expectations is a population concept.
Expectation is a population. When I say small sample, any sample.
Okay.
Unbiasedness basically is independent of sample size. I say any sample. Can I say that?
Yes, that's true. It's independent of sample size.
Yes, sample size plays no role there. But you should also have it in mind that sample size plays no role, meaning what is true for n is equal to 5 could be true for n is equal to 10,000.
Yes.
So this is where the catch comes. I'll precisely catch this problem later on when I go to consistency.
But this
Okay.
is not, this is not possible in case of like consistent estimators.
Yeah, that is exactly where my that is my starting point for consistency. Okay, these are the limitations of unbiasedness. That is a starting point for consistency. But Drishan will wait till to go to consistency. Okay.
Okay, okay.
Kumar, is it okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, we shall continue with this. The question is, could there be any other unbiased estimator with variances smaller than the least squares estimator? There could be. Limiting ourselves to linear estimators, we can show through Gauss-Markov theorem that within this class, OLS estimators are blue. That is, you are confining yourself to linear unbiased estimators. We shall next consider other linear unbiased estimators of beta and show that any such other estimator has a larger variance. Okay. We start by noting that any estimator from the class of linear unbiased estimators can be written in the form B bar AY y less 42, where A is a K by N matrix that does not depend on Y or any unknown parameters. That will be like our X transpose X inverse. See, for example, the least square estimator B equal to X transpose X inverse X transpose. So defined in OLS 17 so that is a linear unbiased estimator given by, so A equal to X transpose X inverse X transpose. So in our case, A was X transpose X inverse X transpose. Okay. Can there be any other A? That is the question. We are interested in finding the best linear unbiased estimator for beta. That is, we are interested in finding a matrix A that leads to an estimator that is best within the whole class of linear unbiased estimators, the whole class of possible matrices represented by matrix A. Okay. Markov theorem shows that B is the best linear unbiased estimator, and there is no matrix A other than A is equal to X times X inverse X transpose, which will lead an estimator that is better than B. The Gauss-Markov theorem is what? This is only a repetition of what I said. Now we have to clarify what we mean by best here. In case of a single parameter, what is best? The coefficient with the lower variance is better. In case of two coefficients, the coefficient in case of many, the coefficient with the lowest variance is better. That is very simple. But in the case of vector of coefficients, we have to compare not the variance alone. We have to compare the variance covariance matrix of least squares estimator. So what does that mean? OLS 41 with the variance covariance matrix of any other competing estimator. What was the variance covariance matrix of B? Sigma square X transpose X inverse. Okay, so with the variance covariance matrix of any other competing estimator, say B bar. How do we say one matrix var Bx is less than var B bar X? This is solved by considering an estimator for, this is solved by considering an estimator for a linear combination of the elements in the parameter vector beta. Go through this. What am I doing here? I'm going to show by considering a linear combination of the elements in the parameter vector beta. Normally, when you say or talk about combining linear combination, two linear combinations are independent and unique if and only if I cannot write one as a linear if I cannot express one as a linear combination of the other. Then and only then these two linear combinations are completely independent. If I can do so, suppose for example beta 1, I can write as C beta 2, where C is some constant beta 1, beta 2 or scalar coefficients. Then why have beta 1? I can have beta 2. Okay, now this is solved by an estimator for any linear combination of, what is a linear combination? Sorry. If A transpose is a 1 by k vector of constants, then linear combination of beta can be written as this. And the corresponding least square estimator for this is A1b, A1b1 plus AKBK. The elements of A can be any constants. For example, if we're just interested in beta 1, then we define A transpose 1, 0, 0 so that A prime B beta equal to beta 1. We are now in a position to say when B will be a better estimator than B bar, where B bar is any other unbiased estimator of beta. We are going to use that particular combination that we saw. we say that B is a better estimator than B bar if and only if variance A prime B is less than or equal to variance A prime B bar for all A while less 43. This implies that by choosing A appropriately, var B1 will be less than var B1 bar, var B2 less than var B2 bar, variance of B1, B2 is less than variance of B1 bar, B2 bar, all combinations, and so on. Let us denote sigma B is the variance covariance matrix of B.
Sir,
And sigma, yeah.
sir, you in the previous slide,
Hmm.
We had mentioned that variance condition for all A, right?
Yeah.
For all J in general. Then what do you mean by choosing A appropriately?
Where did they say choosing A appropriately?
Sir, in the previous slides, when we talked about variance. Yeah.
This one?
No, sir, below.
I'm not saying he's choosing A appropriately.
Okay, sir. So, sir, there's this slide, right, which you showed variance condition. B bar is a better estimator if variance of A dash B.
This one?
No, sir. Okay, sir. No, sir.
This one?
No, sir.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. This one.
This one?
Yes. I'm just confused as to what do you mean by choosing A appropriately?
Okay. How do you prove? So to prove the positive definiteness of any matrix, A, I have to choose some constant so that the linear combination will be much lower. This is going to help me in defining variance covariance matrix. Positive definiteness of variance covariance matrix. You will understand it shortly when we come to the next slide. Why I'm choosing A when talking about A. Okay.
Okay, sir.
I'll just wait for us to 2 more slides. Let us denote. Let's see now this last bullet point. Let us denote sigma B as a variance covariance matrix of B, and sigma B bar as a variance covariance matrix of B bar. Then we can write OLS 43. OLS 43. Where is OLS 43? Okay, OLS 43 as follows: A prime sigma B A. Now we understand what I'm meaning by A. Any constant such that I'll tell you, Pramila, just wait a minute. Less than or equal to A prime sigma B bar A, OLS 44, where B and B bar are the variance covariance matrices of B and B bar. I can rewrite it as this. If OLS 45 holds for all A, any A for that matter, then sigma B bar minus sigma B is called a positive semi-definite or a non-negative definite matrix. A symmetric matrix is positive definite if and only if X transpose AX is greater than 0 for X not 0, and positive semi-definite if and only if X transpose AX greater than or equal to 0 for all X. What is the A there? Can you map it up with the power presentation?
Sigma B bar minus sigma B.
Yeah, the variance covariance matrix.
What is the A? How can you map it? What is the A there according to this latest bullet point, Pramila?
Yeah, the var cover matrix, sir.
No, the X is my constant there, right?
Sir, the
Yes,
X
yes.
is the A, and sigma B bar minus sigma B, that is capital A.
Oh, correct. Capital A. The capital A is sigma B and sigma B bar respectively. A transpose A is nothing but here X transpose X. Okay. Now that is the mapping now. A positive semi-definite if and only if X transpose AX greater than or equal to 0. Oh no, Pramila, your question is for any chosen appropriate A. Any chosen A, I should probably the appropriate should be dropped. Can suppose I replace it with any chosen A? Pramila?
Yes, sir.
So the only condition is that should not be a trivial vector, trivial 0 vector.
Okay.
So that's the only thing. So a positive semi-definite if and only if these conditions are satisfied. Go through this. The implications are threefold. If covariance theta tilde minus covariance theta hat is positive semi-definite when variance of theta I, every variance, okay, is greater than or equal to variance theta I hat for I is equal to 1 to k. Mod covariance theta tilde is greater than or equal to mod covariance theta hat. If C is any k by 1 vector of constants, any k by 1 vector of constants, then var C transpose theta tilde equal to C prime covariance theta tilde C greater than or equal to variance C prime theta hat. And what is this? This is it. Any vector of constants, k by 1 vector of constants. So you'll have C transpose become 1 by k, that will become a scalar. So we can still say it will be greater than or equal to. So this is the condition. So in given this condition,
So
what will be, yeah.
So what is theta over here? Theta hat and theta tilde?
I'm just saying theta hat and theta tilde are two competing estimators for the unknown parameter theta.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Got it.
Okay. Okay. Given this, which is the linear unbiased estimator?
Both of them are linear unbiased estimators.
No. Which one best?
Theta hat.
Theta hat.
Theta hat.
Theta hat. That's exactly what we are trying to say. Now our thing is B bar and B for the unknown parameter beta. To prove the positive semi-definiteness, we start by defining the k by n matrix C is equal to A minus X transpose X inverse X transpose, so that B bar can be written as, go through this. When OLS 46, B bar represents the class of all linear estimators. So if we want to restrict this only to linear unbiased estimators, then certain restrictions are needed. See the bullet point for third, second, and third. B bar represents the class of all linear estimators. If you want to restrict this only to linear unbiased estimators, then certain restrictions are needed to be imposed on the C matrix. To find this, we shall take expectation of OLS 46 to obtain. Take the expectations carefully. Oh, sorry, this is nothing. So what condition is this going to give you? For unbiasedness, is OLS 47 okay?
So C has to be 0.
No. No, Cx has to be 0. Okay, sorry. Okay. No, strictly speaking, C as X need not be 0. This is admitted. Okay, strictly speaking, yes. But OLS 47, okay. Now, for unbiasedness, we need E B bar equal to beta. Thus,
Okay,
we
no,
require this.
Cx has to be 0. Cx has to
Okay,
be
Cx beta to be equal to 0. For Cx beta to be equal to 0, for all possible values of beta, we need Cx to be equal to 0 for B bar to represent. Why am I excluding beta? Beta is a population parameter vector. So I think to have that be equal to 0, the whole analysis will collapse. So we'll remove beta and concentrate only on say we need Cx to be equal to 0 for B bar to represent the class of all linear unbiased estimators. This is a correct way of saying it. From OLS 46 and using the experiment, using the requirement Cx is equal to 0. This is OLS 46. I hope you have written it down. Cx is equal to 0. And using the requirement Cx is equal to 0, we have the following. 48. B bar minus B equal to X transpose X inverse X transpose E plus CE. can express the variance covariance matrix of B bar as follows. Go through this. Go through OLS 49. That is OLS 49. Since Cx and X transpose must be null matrices, because Cx is the requirement equal to 0, and the transpose also must be null matrices for the property of unbiasedness to be fulfilled, OLS 49 becomes sigma B bar equal to sigma square X transpose X inverse sigma square CC transpose. So where is the contribution going to come from for the imposter, if you can call this? B is our estimator, B bar is the imposter. Okay, so see where is the contribution coming from? The contribution is coming from CC transpose. What is remaining now?
Sigma square CC transpose.
I have to show that this is equal to sigma B plus sigma square CC transpose. Can we write it this way? Or this sigma B bar minus sigma B is equal to sigma square CC transpose.
The second term is like, why is it 0?
Why is it 0?
The second term of the first of OLS 49.
Remember, OLS 49 X transpose C transpose is what? CX
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I written. That's the next bullet point. Okay. So see OLS 51. It's a matrix multiplied by its own transpose is always positive semi-definite. That is true. CC transpose is positive semi-definite irrespective of how the C matrix is defined. Since sigma square is always positive, sigma square CC transpose will always be positive semi-definite, and hence sigma B bar minus sigma B will be positive definite semi-definite, which is what we set out to prove. So the two covariance matrices will be equal only if C is equal to 0. That just like Drishan pointed out, C is equal to 0. When will C be equal to 0? C will be equal to 0 when A is equal to X transpose X inverse. So under only one condition, under this condition, okay, so B bar reduces to B. So we have shown that the only estimator that is blue, I'm again repeating, if you are ready to confine yourself only to linear unbiased estimators, OLS estimator B is the best linear unbiased. So least stochastic estimator is blue. Gauss-Markov theorem proves that. To summarize, the result in OLS 51 implies that out of the class of all linear unbiased estimators, least squares estimate is the best, where best implies minimum variance. So this many of you must have gone through it. Implications of stochastic regressive Gauss-Markov theorem. Suppose we relax the assumption that X is fixed and say it is no more non-stochastic. It is stochastic. How does it change the situation? It does change the situation expression-wise. it does minimal changes, but interpretation, you should be careful. The previous analysis is conditioned in the observed data. Remember always when people say X is in the regression analysis, X is fixed. That is a wrong way of saying. In the linear regression analysis, Y equal to X beta plus E, both are random. Y and X are random. Beta is unknown population parameter vector. E is also a random variable. But the moment X has been drawn, it becomes the random X becomes fixed or given to you or constant when you say capital X equal to small x. It has taken some value, then and only then it becomes constant. So this remember the subtle difference. X is random, X equal to X is given, fixed. Okay, so expectation of X given X equal to X is simply that X. So the subtle difference you need to keep in mind. Later on, I'm going to tell you the subtle difference between limiting distribution and asymptotic distribution. Both are not same, but unfortunately in many econometrics textbooks, these are written interchangeably, limiting as well as asymptotic. No, limiting distribution is a means to get the asymptotic distribution. I'm explaining it later. Implications of stochastic regress or Gauss-Markov theorem. Previous analysis is done conditionally in the observed data. How to get the unconditional statistical properties of beta? B. A conventional method is to obtain the desired results conditioned on X first, and then find the unconditional result by averaging over, that is integrating over, the conditional distributions. This is how it is done in hardcore statistics, but here we are smoothing over everything. The conditional variance of B is this. We have seen this before. Okay, for the exact variance, we use the decomposition of variance, var B is this. The second term is 0 since EBX equal to beta for all X. So how do I get it? The second bullet point for all X. So var B equal to EX equal to sigma square X transpose X inverse. Sigma square is equal to expected value of X, X transpose X inverse. Remember, var B depends on the particular X. See the difference now. You see the difference between this and this. The expectation comes ahead of X transpose X inverse because X is no more given to it is random or stochastic. So we can only use the word expected value of sigma square into expected value of X transpose X inverse. Okay, in practice, you are supposed to average over all possible X's. The only difference from our earlier expression for var B is that we replace X1 with the expected value to get the approximate covariance matrix. So unconditional variance can only be described in terms of the average behavior of X. We shall return to this issue later. I don't know when. Note that in our discussion Gauss-Markov theorem, we had shown that var Bx is less than B bar X for any linear unbiased B bar not equal to B and for specific X in our sample. This is exactly what Gauss-Markov theorem says that. Okay, what is the largest sample extension of this Gauss-Markov theorem leads us to some other things. So later on, we are going to relax this and we are going to see what will be the large sample extension of the Gauss-Markov theorem for the specific X in our sample. So this is it, Gauss-Markov theorem. But this inequality holds for every particular X, then it must hold for. If this inequality holds for every particular X, then it must hold for this also. That is, if it holds for every particular X, then it must hold for the average value of X also. The implication is therefore the unbiasedness property of the Gauss-Markov theorem we proved for least squares estimator hold whether or not we condition on the particular sample in hand or consider instead sampling broadly from the population. So we can conclude the linear regression model, the least square estimator B with the minimum variance linear estimator of unbiased estimator of beta, whether X is stochastic or non-stochastic, so long as assumptions of the model continue to hold A1 through A4. The variance of the least squares estimator. Now we are talking about, we have shown that B is blue, and we have talked about the unbiasedness of B. And now estimating the variance of the least squares estimator. What am I doing here? Something else that is to be estimated here. Now that we have established the least square estimator is blue, we require a sample estimate of the variance covariance matrix for B given beta sigma square X transpose X inverse. X transpose X is again, we are assuming that is given. What is remaining is an estimator for sigma square. Why do we want an estimator of the variance, the least squares estimator? To test hypothesis about beta to form confidence intervals. What do you have to do? We have to estimate the only unknown parameter sigma square in the formula for the bare covariant matrix. Since sigma square is the expected value of EI square and EI hat is an estimate of EI, by analogy we have this formula sigma hat square equal to 1 by n EI hat square, which seem to be a natural estimator. The least squares residuals are E hat is equal to ME, which I have seen, C OL less 20. An estimate of sigma square will be based on the sum of squared residuals, E hat prime E hat, E prime ME OL less 52.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I had a doubt regarding stochastic and non-stochastic x. So,
Yeah.
if we assume that x is fixed or rather x is non-stochastic, then we mean that we keep, like in theoretical perspective, it means that we keep the x fixed and then perform the experiment like n number of
Yeah.
times and data on y.
Yes. If it is non-stochastic, you do for one x. Okay,
Yeah,
you do
and
for
if
another
it is
do for another x, it will be completely different, and you hope on an average this will whatever you are trying to say you talk about averaging over all possible values of x. Okay.
yes, sir, but when we actually do the experiment, we don't, like you said, that we don't do any repeated sampling or repeated experiment of that kind. We from the same
Yeah.
population we
Correct.
sample. So how is it relevant here?
This is relevant from the theoretical point of view. Okay, when the question you are asking is the first thing that will be discussed in econometrics 2. What is it? In econometrics 2, hopefully, this is the first thing the teacher is going to relax. M is not no more stochastic, X is stochastic. Okay, the second thing, there is something called instrumental variable technique in applied class. Okay, this is Gandhi.
Yes, sir.
Okay, in case of stochastic regressor, stochastic X, we are going to make use of what is called an instrumental variable technique. Instrumental variable. What is this instrumental variable? The instrumental variable as such, it will have maximum correlation with the X that you are going to use instrument for, and it is uncorrelated with the other variables. Do you understand this point?
Okay.
That is how we are going to proceed in practice when you are going to relax that assumption that X is no more deterministic, but it is stochastic. Understood?
So all this is from theoretical perspective, but
Yes, all
when
this
we
from
apply
theoretical
it,
perspective.
we do
Yes.
it only for one sample.
Yes, you do it on one sample only, and if it will be the case. It will be the case that AM is only non-stochastic. Sorry, non-deterministic. It is stochastic. That is why. Remember, Gandhi, we are in the very comfort zone of single equation setup.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have to we'll slowly make your life difficult as you go through. Okay, now you are in a comfort zone. Comfort zone itself, there are so many problems. Okay, now that instrumental variable does not work, that will lead you to simultaneous systems equation. Understood? And this is only for cross section. Time series, so many things are there. Okay, can you proceed?
Okay.
So what do we have to do? We have to estimate the only unknown population parameter. Go through this. All these things we have seen before. An estimator of sigma square will be based on the sum of squared residuals. This is how it is written. M is the so-called idempotent matrix. The expected value of this quadratic form is this. The scalar E transpose ME is equal to its trace. Oh, Bopre. Have you come across I hope all of you are aware of this term trace.
Yes.
Okay. Now by using the result on the cyclic permutations in a product, trace ABCD is equal to trace BCDA, CDAB. You cannot do, remember the permutation. Trace ABCD cannot be like trace ABDC, it won't work. See the permutation, cyclical permutation in a product. This is the rule to toggle around this. Okay. By using this result and cyclic permutations in a product, trace ABCD equal to trace BCDA. Trace of E transpose ME to expected value of trace m e prime x. This is what I have done. Since m is a function of x, the result is you take out m of the expectation, trace m expected value of e transpose conditional on x equal to trace m sigma square I. That's equal to sigma square trace m. The trace of m is Bopre. Go through this. So therefore, expected value of e hat prime e hat conditional on x is equal to n minus k sigma square. Minus k sigma square. So that the natural estimator is biased towards 0. Although the bias becomes smaller as the sample size increases. Okay. So unbiased estimator sigma square is therefore s square equal to e hat prime e hat by n minus k OLS 53. This estimator is unconditionally unbiased as well. See where we are using LIE to killing effect. Unconditional expectation of a square is nothing but expected value of the conditional expectation, which is nothing but sigma square. So that is the standard error of the regression is yes, the square root of s square. So with s square we can compute now the only unknown estimator sigma square. We have been replaced by unknown parameter sigma square has been replaced by an estimator s square, which is nothing but e hat prime e hat by n minus k. So for unbiasedness, we have to multiply it by 1 by n minus k. So this is exactly what you would be getting in all your regression packages. Remember, what does the diagonal element of this matrix give you?
Sir, can you repeat the question?
What does the diagonal element of OLS 54 give you? Diagonal elements.
So the variances of each of the
Variance of
entries.
Beta.
Beta.
Variables.
Variance are the beta coefficients.
Yeah.
Okay, variance are the beta coefficient. The square root of the kth diagonal element of this matrix is a standard error of the estimator bk, and this is what is reported in all your regression package. In all the regression package that is being what is reported is the standard error. The diagonal element of x transpose sigma s square x times x inverse will give you the variance, the square root of which will give you the standard error. What does the off diagonal elements tell you? What do the off diagonal elements tell you?
The covariance of
Covariance between the parameters. Okay, this is covariance between parameters is very important when you come later. That is also an indication of any possible strength of collinearity between the variables that can be taken as that way only. So this is what is being reported, and this standard error is the one that you are going to use in calculating the t-stat. Remember, this is standard error of beta I, standard error of bi. So this is standard error of. This is how you get the standard error. We have not made use of the normality assumption at all so far in our analysis. This assumption is useful to construct confidence intervals. If you assume that E is a multivariate normal distribution, then we may say that this is the famous equation B conditional on X. Now, most of the time the conditionality is forgotten, is dropped rather, so long as you understand what is what. is normally distributed with mean beta and variance sigma square x transpose x inverse, sigma square replaced by s square. This specifies a multivariate normal distribution. So each element of beta is normally distributed. This is written this way. The sigma expected is what here. The estimate of this is given here. Loss sample properties are least squares estimator. What is this now? This is going to take us through a lot of stuff. So far we have discussed only the small sample or exact sample or finite sample. All are used interchangeably. Why use a small sample in a fixed sample? Exact sample or finite sample. Okay, but most of the times, you'll have to come out of the comfort zone of finite sample or exact sample and talk about large sample properties of least squares estimator. What is that? Using only assumptions A1 through A4, we have established the following exact finite sample properties. No, what is exact finite sample property? Exact finite sample properties for the least squares estimators B and S square are unknown parameters beta and sigma square. What are those? To recall, what is finite sampling? To recall, the finite sample or the small sample properties of the estimator B refer to the properties of B for any sample of fixed size n, when n is a fixed number less than infinity. This is the most important thing. Okay, it can be any number, but it should be finite. N could even be small as 20 or 5 or 10. The attendant sampling distribution is based on the concept of repeated sampling. This is the econometric essence or econometric concept when we talk about unbiasedness. The finite sample properties of the estimator are defined in terms of the mean and the variance of the finite sample distribution of the estimator. We shall recall the finite sample properties for convenience. Once again, if EBX expected value of B conditional on X is equal to unconditional expectation of beta is equal to beta, B equal to beta, the least squares estimator, coefficient estimator is unbiased. Similarly, this is nothing but the disturbance variance estimator is unbiased. Disturbance variance estimator is unbiased. Sigma square is nothing but the variance of the disturbance term. var B conditional on X equal to sigma square X transpose X inverse, and var B without the conditional thing is nothing but sigma square expected value of X transpose X inverse. Gauss-Markov theorem. The blue of A prime B is A prime beta is A prime B for any vector of constants A. So that B is blue. However, the unbiasedness property has two shortcomings. What are they? Except in the case of least squares estimator, they remember very carefully, so long as you are in the comfort zone of linear least squares estimator for the slope vector that we have discussed so far, it is relatively rare for an estimator to be unbiased. One can reload hundreds of situations that I've come across where the estimator is not even unbiased if you confine only to linear least squares. Okay. Later on, when you are discussing stochastic regressors, there will be a situation when instrumental variable also will not be of any use, no matter what the sample size is. Okay. Gandhi, I think you asked this question. Now I remember. Gandhi, you asked this question, right?
So which question?
Yeah, which question about the stochastic regressors?
Yes, yes.
Okay, there will be a situation when nothing will work except going for a simultaneous systems equation. Okay, when X is stochastic, that means to say you cannot prove unbiasedness even when t tends to infinity. The sample size n tends to infinity. So unbiasedness is not a very welcome property for this. Beyond the multiple regression model that we have considered, the best one can hope for is that the estimator improves or be less biased when more data is used in the study. Remember, a second point, unbiasedness does not imply that more information is better. The estimator is unbiased irrespective of the sample size. This is something against logic, because what you say for n equal to 5 is true for n is equal to 20, is true for n is equal to 100, is true for n is equal to 10,000. It defies logic, because as you increase the sample size, your your sample is your estimator properties of estimator is expected to improve, but that doesn't result. That isn't the case. That is not the case in the unbiasedness case. Logically, more information should result in a better estimator, which is not happening in the discussion of unbiasedness. So, what is the remedy? What is the remedy? How can you rectify the situation?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, so like consistency is a more preferable property than unbiasedness.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Loss sample property of consistency addresses these two issues and provides us with a better tool to assess least squares estimator. That is what I said at the beginning, right in the beginning, Drishan. Consistency is the minimum thing that you need for an estimator to satisfy. Okay? You take it from me. You take it from me.
Okay, sir.
This is the minimum thing. Loss sample property of consistency addresses these two issues and provides us with a better tool that is least squares estimator. Loss sample or asymptotic properties of an estimator or the properties. See the bullet point, first bullet point. Of an estimator, a property is a sampling distribution of that estimator as a sample size n approaches infinity. Okay, we are relaxing the condition that n is fixed or n should be finite. So we are allowing for the possibility that n improves, the sample size increases, becomes larger and larger, the properties become of the estimator become better and better. Okay, that is exactly the first bullet point tells you. Loss sample or asymptotic properties on the estimator are the properties, the sampling distribution of that estimator as sample size n approaches infinity. Such notions are required frequently in econometrics as the estimation rules properties are so complicated that little specific can be said about them without the assumption of very large samples. This is another important point in econometrics. It is so complicated, we can only hope that the estimator that we have advised or recommended will be consistent. Okay, but for theoretical econometricians, there is no escape. You got to prove that your estimator that you are recommending is consistent at least. Okay, so in many econometrics papers, original papers, they'll say consistency of my estimator. Last sem asymptotic efficiency and all those stuff are very, very difficult for many estimators. Okay, so the minimum thing that they prove, all those who suggest estimators, is a consistency property. So that is why it's very important, much more important than unbiasedness. Okay, now it's more about that. For the basic wireless model, it is straightforward to derive the loss sample or asymptotic properties of least squares estimator. Note that we have not used the normality assumption in establishing the finite sample properties, and it is inessential even to establish the large sample properties. This is something bit of a shock to many of you. It is not necessary. Normality assumption about the disturbance term is inessential even to establish large sample properties. Why am I saying this? Can anyone explain to me why I'm saying this? What is that one big thing that I'm going to use?
Central limit theorem.
CLT is the most important thing. Remember, CLT does not say anything about distribution. CLT has two things. First thing, Lindbergh-Levy says that IID, and the Lyapunov or Lindbergh-Feller says it need to be only independent, not necessarily identically distributed. Why am I saying this? I'm going to use that shortly. That one we have not seen, the Lindbergh-Lyapunov or the Lindbergh-Feller version of central limit theorem. That is too mathematical. Sorry. So we did not see that. Third bullet point, the distributional assumption is, however, essential to draw statistical inference and for maximum likelihood estimation. For maximum likelihood estimation, we need to specify the distribution for the error term. If it is normal distribution, we can write the likelihood and the log likelihood accordingly. You are going to see this maximum likelihood estimation shortly after we are through with this wireless, which we shall defer to a later section. Okay. Consistency of the least squares estimators. Should we take it now? Hello?
No, sir.
Kumar, is it too much already?
Sir, this lecture was very much complicated. I've understood very little, sir.
Why? I was fast or something?
Yes, sir, you were slightly fast. I mean, this was very complicated lecture.
Complicated. Okay. Not clear?
Sir, I have to go through all those derivations again. I mean, understanding so many matrices and all.
Okay. How about you, Pramila?
Sir, I could understand most of it, but then I have to revise to make sure
Okay.
that
So
I
what
know.
shall we do? What shall we do? Garima, Gaurima. Should we go for? How did you find the lectures, Gaurima? Hello?
Am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Tell me.
Sir, I had to go through it again.
Okay. And what the Shubham Das? How are you? Have we talked before? Shubham Das, you are there.
Hello.
Have we talked before?
Yes, sir, we have.
Okay, so how do you find this? Should we go to the next thing, consistency of least squares estimator? What do you feel?
Sir, I was able to follow this because we did this exact thing in undergraduate, so it was
Okay.
all right.
Okay. Okay. So the same with Drishan, I suppose.
Sir, I know like a lot of what you covered today, but I have to go through the lectures of your last class because I could not go through it once because of the exams and also.
Okay. So, Acha, okay, you have an examination tomorrow in micro, right?
We had one yesterday, we have one tomorrow, and the day after we have an assignment.
Oh, okay. Kanika, how about you?
Yes, sir, I have to revise all this, sir. I know the mathematical portions, but I didn't have all this in undergraduation. I know the mathematical part only. So I have to revise all this.
So consistency, should we do it today or Saturday 10:55? I need to do okay. Oh my goodness. Okay, we'll take it tomorrow night. Friday karenge, and what is that? Saturday there is a special lecture. And where is Srishti? Srishti Singh is there. Sir. Srishti, arrange two special lectures for me after the midterm or before the midterm, any which way.
All right,
Can
sir.
you? Okay.
Yes, sir, sure.
You check with the class and arrange a special lecture for me for 2 hours.
So what would be the suitable time for you?
Except 9:30, everything else is suitable for me. No, 2:30, sorry. 9:30 is suitable for me. For God's sake, don't fix it at 2:30. 2:30 afternoon, because I will sleep.
So post 2:30 is not an option.
4 is an option. 9:30 to 1 o'clock is okay. 1 to 2 lunchtime. 2:30 to 4 is absolutely out of question. After 4, anytime, up to midnight also, no problems.
Okay, so I will let you know.
At least two, besides the one that we are going to have this Saturday.
Okay, sir.
Okay, Kumar, I'll send you. Yeah.
Can you please upload the slides beforehand, because I will go through.
I'll upload the slides almost immediately. I've been uploading it almost immediately, I suppose.
The slides for consistency as well, because I have to go through it beforehand so that I understand.
No. Consistency, I will not upload. Consistency, I have to ask you a lot of questions. Then only you'll understand. Then only I will send. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, that's the best way to do. Okay, where is it? Yamini Jam, you have been quiet of late. No mistakes in my PPT, in my slides?
No,
sir. Okay, that is nice to see that. Okay, Yashika Chug, have we talked before?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, have we talked before?
Yes, multiple times, sir.
A different time. How did you like today's lecture? Very fast, very slow? Have you
Sir,
done these things before?
Sir, yes, I've done these things before, but it was a little fast.
Bit fast?
Yeah, a bit fast.
Okay, I'll cut down the speed next time.
Yes, sir. Thank
Yeah,
you.
who is this? Swarupjit Palit. Have we talked before? Swarupjit?
Yes, sir. We've spoken before a couple of times.
Have you done all these things before? What we saw today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have done a few parts of this in the undergrad courses.
So it was not too fast for you, I suppose.
So it's okay, I'll obviously I have to go back to my notes and everything. I have to read the books again. So yeah, it's okay.
Gunika Gambhir, how about you?
Yes, sir.
How was it today? You were very fast, very slow?
Sir, again, it would require some revision on my part in order to go through all the material.
Okay, okay. So, okay, Kumar says that I have to cut down on the speed.
Yes, sir. For me, it was fast today.
Okay, okay, okay.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
sir.
It's 10:58. We'll see the consistency will be more consistent in the next class onwards. Okay, have a nice day. Good luck for the exams and assignment. Bye-bye. The class ends.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.